If Dr. Love Smith goes back to her seat, we can start this meeting.
I get called out, but there were multiple people in the conversation.
But you were so close. You were so close. It was much more fun to say Dr. Love Smith. Thank you for taking it for the team. It is now 6:16. We'll go ahead and get started. I'd like to call this meeting of the Belton Independent School District Board of Trustees to order. A quorum of board members is present. This meeting has been duly called and a notice of the meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Please rise for a moment of silent prayer or meditation, and then remain standing for a pledge of allegiance and honors to the Texas flag, which are both located over here on my right. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you all. Thank you all for joining us this evening. We are going to start off with public comments. Do we have anyone signed up? Thank you, Ms. Burns. We'll move on over to recognitions.
Good evening again.
Yay.
Yeah, yay. This is the really fun part, right? The policy part was fun too, though.
Yes, we love recognitions.
We're going to start tonight with something unique. Our student showcase, where we're going to feature fine arts performance at every one of these board meetings coming up, is actually going to take place virtually this evening. Our Lake Belton High School Stampede Marching Band made the state UIL 4A competition. They are in San Antonio right now. And we're looking a little under an hour until they will, their time says they'll be able to enter the field, but we will, if we're still meeting here, we will be recessing to tune in on these TVs to watch them perform their inaugural show, The Future is Bright.
Awesome.
So we'll look forward to that, 7/11.
7/11.
And I understand that Ty could tell us a little bit, and so could Matt, that these band competitions run like clockwork. So 7/11 is when they compete. So we'll be tuning in. It's been 19 years since Belton ISD has had a band at the state competition.
Wow.
Nice.
Almost as long as I've been alive. That's awesome. Glad y'all caught that.
So congratulations to the Stampede. Next up this evening, we have our Temple Rotary Educator of the Month. Heidi Morgan is being recognized by the Temple Rotary Club for her outstanding service to Belton ISD. Heidi serves as an intervention teacher at Tarver Elementary. She's in her 13th year in education and her 9th year with Belton ISD. Mrs. Morgan was recently asked to shift her role from interventionist to serve as an at-home or online teacher to serve students who choose at-home learning for their first 9 weeks. Not only was she asked to teach at-home students, she was asked to teach self-contained 5th grade. She graciously accepted this challenge and has exceeded expectations. Principal Aubrietz has said that Heidi embodies and emulates the ideas of service and grace, always with a smile on her face and a never-quit attitude. She continues to support teachers and systems across the campus and has proven time and time again she is a pillar in our foundation. Tarver is a better place because of her. Our staff and students are blessed that she chose to serve this community. Congratulations, Mrs. Morgan.
Congratulations, Ms. Heidi.
Our next recognition of the evening, the Belton Rotary Educator of the Quarter, Miss Molly Casal from Beck's Early Childhood School, or Belton Early Childhood School, is unable to be here with us tonight. She is a mother of 3, and I think all 3 of her students are performing in one of the many holiday concerts that we have going on this evening. She sends her regrets. We will make sure she gets her certificate, and you can read a little bit more about her in the board memo. Congratulations to her.
Congratulations to her as well.
Our final recognition of the evening, Dr. Smith, if you'll join. We have a Big Red community partner we'd like to recognize this evening. Entering this holiday season, Crossroads Church stepped up in a big way to support Project Heartbeat students and host families in Belton ISD through their Take a Tag, Bless a Child campaign. It was complete with a website and everything. Y'all, it was so impressive. As a congregation, Crossroads Church will be filling the Christmas wish list and clothing needs for more than 170 of the over 308 homeless and foster and host family children that are participating in our annual Project Heartbeat Angel Project. For their support of Belton ISD students and significant generosity in the Big Red community this holiday season, the Crossroads Church is represented this evening by Pastor Brian Grant and Care Pastor Gretchen Kendall. We're forcing our amazing Project Heartbeat staff there, Christina Wilson and our intern, Bethany Munson, who've been helping make sure that all those tagged gifts are getting to the right places, joining this picture. Congratulations and thank you, Crossroads Church. And we have some pictures on the Belton ISD Flickr account right now where you can see what it looks like, what 308 large wrapped gifts with tags going to our Belton ISD students and families looks like. They've been working really hard.
Well, thank you for all that you do. It certainly takes a village, so we appreciate all that you do to maintain that thought. Okay, we will move on to our action items, and it's a hard one. We recently received a resignation letter from Dr. Rosie Montgomery. She is resigning from the board due to personal reasons. I'm sure you all noticed she wasn't here this evening, and that's effective. Her letter said effective December 7th. However, based on our board policy, she will remain a board member until we fill the seat. So, that being said, again, that's a hard one. We love Rosie, and we are going to miss her. And I would be remiss if I did not say to you that she may be resigning from the board, but she is not resigning from the Big Red community. Her heart and soul is here. You will see her manifested, her work manifested in other ways. So we will desperately miss her expertise on a variety of subjects. And we will miss her fellowship from being on this board. She's kind of the one with the good common sense that keeps us all grounded. So we will definitely miss that. However, all of that being said, we need to do a couple of things. We need a motion to accept the resignation of Dr. Rosie Montgomery, trustee for Area 2. Is there a motion? That's Mr. Ty Taggart. Is there a second? Okay, Mr. Floor. All in favor, please raise your hand. And if you say nay, just say nay, so that way I'll know. Okay, seeing that motion passed, if the board wishes to fill the vacancy by appointment until the May 1st, 2021 trustee election, I would recommend the following timeline. And I'm just going to outline it, and then we'll vote on that as well. Starting tomorrow, which is December 15th, we'll begin applications for individuals interested in serving as trustee for Area 2. And then the deadline for closure on those applications is January 4th. And then January 11th, we would have a special board meeting to conduct interviews. And if needed, we'll have another one January the 19th. And with the goal of seating and swearing in a regular board member at our regular board meeting on January 25th. Is there a motion to approve the proposed timeline? Janet. Is there a second? Mr. Norwood, all in favor, please raise your hand. That passes. So with that motion approved, in order to fill the vacancy for Area 2, individuals who wish to be considered must apply with a letter of interest. Letters of interest to serve as trustee for Area 2 should be addressed to Suzanne McDonald, me, board president, and can be submitted in the following ways. And we'll get this information out there, but you can email it to suzanne.mcdonald@bisd.net or mail to us or hand deliver to the admin office. Again, we will get that information out there. The deadline for submitting a letter of interest is Monday, January 4th, 2021 by 5 p.m. This information will also be posted on the district's website.
Madam President, if I may, real quick, if there are any applicants that are interested, just a reminder that they would be unable to drop it off physically while the district is closed for the winter holiday. So we will be closed, I believe, up through January the 4th after this Friday. And so email, mail, or hand delivery is great, but just remember the offices will be closed for a certain amount of time.
That's a great point. Thank you. Okay, anything further on that? If not, we will move on to the next item. And that is talking about the different committees that we have, and now is an opportunity to change committees, kind of mix it up a little bit, if you will. Currently on our facilities committee, we have, well, you all know who's on each committee, but I will tell you that if you have an interest in changing committees, I don't want to belay the time here. If you have an interest in changing the committee, now is the time to do so. So please express if you'd like to remain where you are on the facilities committee.
Yes, I would like to move to policy.
Did you tell Ty?
I have told Ty.
Okay.
And I told Ty that it's not because of Ty.
Jeff and I are going to filibuster, so we're going to be here all night.
Ty, I recommended you for policy, and they told me no.
Thank you, whoever said that.
No, I just want to say, you know, one of the great joys and blessings of being on this board is how unique each one of our gifts are. And I think from the beginning, we've all appreciated and respected each other and what we each individually bring to this board, because each one is completely different. We all sort of represent a different aspect of the district, and some of those skills overlapped, and some of them fill a void that we wouldn't be able to fill if that person wasn't here. And so for me personally, I just feel like my strengths lie with policy a little bit more than facilities. I feel like I can be a little bit more useful in the wording of the way things are moving forward. Hopefully I can be an asset to that team, and hopefully we'll bring in somebody that'll be great for facilities.
Thank you, Janet. And just to kind of give you all some background a little bit, these committees haven't always been around. They've only been in existence since our September 2019 board meeting. We determined that we needed a policy committee and a facilities committee. And I would just, that's a direct thank you to Dr. Battershell and her leadership during that particular time. And so at this time, it is recommended that Janet Lee, trustee, fill the vacancy on that she moves from facilities to policy. Do we need a motion in a second on that? So I'll motion from Mr. Norwood. Is there a second? Okay, Mr. Alcozer, all in favor, please raise your hand. That passes. And so, any other movement? Do you want to leave the facilities, Mr. Mr. Taggart? Would you like to go for the policy? Okay. Awesome. Okay. Class meeting 9. Okay. And then I believe that when you all are in your meetings, that's when you all decide and determine who's going to be the chairperson, if that's going to keep the existing ones or if you're going to switch. So we will leave that for further business within your meetings. And it is optional if the board president wants to attend, and I appreciate the option to attend as my schedule frees up. So thank you all. So facilities, you all are good. Policy, you guys good? Anybody else want to leave policy and move over to facilities?
Policy is the best committee out there, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we're going to do that. Okay. All righty. Well, moving on. We'll move on to our next little bit of business here. All righty. So, Dr. Smith, if you will go ahead and talk to us about the adjustments to the 2021 school calendar.
Yes, ma'am. I'm going to invite Dr. Melinda Golden up to lead us through this. As you all know, we have been in the process of gathering some feedback from teachers on what we can do to best support them in a challenging year for us all, but even more so for our classroom teachers. And so Dr. Golden's going to talk a little bit about that.
Thank you. Welcome, Dr. Golden.
Thank you. And yes, I am back again to talk to a potential revision of the 2020-2021 school calendar. As Dr. Smith said, we did conduct a thought exchange to hear the perspectives of our teachers. And I can tell you the number one thought and the number one need that came out of that thought exchange data was around the complexities of planning for and delivering exceptional learning experiences both virtually and face-to-face, often simultaneously, with approximately the same amount of planning time that they had during a normal school year. And we followed up that thought exchange with some live Zoom meetings where teachers were invited to come and talk to us so we could ask more probing questions about that thought exchange data. And so based on all of that feedback, as well as we sought the feedback of our DWIC, our teachers are represented, each campus is, on our district-wide Education Improvement Committee. And again, the common theme was we really need additional planning time and professional learning time in order to design work in this environment. And so with that, we went to work, and the calendar that you have, I believe it's on the next slide, will show that we are asking to add 3 days to this calendar starting in January. So you'll notice there's a date, January 5th. We've added March 1st and then April 26th as professional learning and planning days for teachers. The other revision we're requesting is to add on January 22nd. Because we changed the calendar at the beginning of the year, it shifted the semester end to January. And so for our secondary teachers with all of those final exams and high stakes grades at the end of a semester, we needed to shift a early dismissal time for secondary only on January 22nd. And so those are the changes that we're asking for your consideration tonight for the 2021 school calendar.
Any comments or questions about that? Mr. Shaggart?
I just want to say that, obviously, you know, my wife's a teacher, and we had this discussion. We went to Lubbock this weekend, so we had a lot of time, a lot of windshield time to talk about things. This means a lot to our teachers, and they are very appreciative of y'all listening. This thought exchange thing that you've brought into this district you guys have has meant a lot. They feel like their voices are truly being heard and their concerns truly are. And so I just wanted to let you know that when I'm talking to her and she chokes up about something,
Oh, gosh.
I know it's a stressful year and we're all on wit's end, but it really does mean a lot. And so I know that they're struggling and it's been really hard, but they know y'all have their back with this. So.
Wow.
Just wanted to pass that on.
Thank you for saying that. We have incredible teachers, and I can tell you the other thing that was a common thread through all of it, even though we're trying to help people understand it doesn't have to be perfect, I can tell you our teachers don't accept that. They want that perfection. They strive for that, and they feel it's disheartening to them when they feel like they're not perfect. And we keep telling them we're about continuous improvement and continuous growth, and these are very challenging circumstances, and so we value them very much. So thank you, Ty, for that.
So just
Mr.
from a
Floor.
student standpoint, so that's 3 days of instruction. And so clearly, I guess we're still good from an educational minutes standpoint if we
are.
do that. How close are we to that if we take these 3 days out?
I can get you the exact number of minutes, but we still have minutes built into the calendar, so we're not right up against the minimum. The state minimum is 75,600 minutes, and then y'all passed a waiver earlier in the year where we could use 2,100 of those minutes for professional learning. And so I can get you the exact number, Todd, and I've looked at it so much I'm embarrassed I can't quote it to you right now. But we have additional minutes built into the school year on top of this.
Okay. I think one of the challenges potentially, I agree that we absolutely need this for the teachers, right? And more planning time is absolutely necessary. I mean, I think there's some great stuff going on, and there's room to, help relieve some pressure to do some sharing and continue on. I think one of the challenges this does cause, though, is for some of our working families who now have 3 more days they have to try to figure out what to do with their kids, especially the little ones, right? So this is not, it shouldn't be, I mean, it should be an easy decision from one standpoint, but it's not an easy decision from a community standpoint. I think we just want to make sure that we recognize that.
I appreciate you saying that, Chris, because actually we have debated this calendar on so many levels with our district leadership team, talking about it in DWIC, and we had a community member on DWIC who spoke about support for the teachers, and certainly it is a recognition that we are asking our families to take care of their children during those days to support our teachers, and so it is a challenge for them as well.
And so just to clarify, the other side of what Chris was just saying, the immediate benefit for our families is that when they break this coming Friday, this Friday's their last day, they'll have an additional day to spend time with, as a family over the Christmas holidays, starting with that additional day of January 5th.
That is correct. The students would return then on January 6th.
January 6th, and that would not be an early release day because of the 2 days that were closed before.
That's correct.
Dr. Smith, did you have something?
I just wanted to say, to echo Melinda's point, we have debated this heavily because of the impact on our community. And I need our community to know that and our board to know that. We wouldn't bring you something if we didn't think it was extremely important, but we don't overlook the impact on families at all. Their families equally have given a lot to us, this school district, and their efforts to support us through COVID. And I need to just really directly acknowledge that in a normal year, we would not be bringing you numerous changes to a calendar. Obviously, this isn't a normal year, and we're going to do our best to support our teachers, but we do not overlook the support that families have given us through all of this. So I just want to reiterate that.
And on the back end, we're still looking at the initially identified graduation date of June 10th.
Correct.
That has not changed.
That has not changed.
Awesome.
No.
Any other comments or questions?
I'm just going to put a last-second plug
Sure.
in. So while we're here talking 2021 calendar, we're issuing a thought exchange this week, seeking input from our community for designing the 2021-2022 school year calendar. So we're going to release that this week, and just are asking for student voice, community voice, teacher voice. So the design work of that calendar is beginning shortly.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank
Okay, is there a motion to approve the revised calendar as presented? Mr. Taggart, is there a second? Mr. Norwood, all in favor, please raise your hand. That passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we will move on to district campus performance objectives.
Dr. Golden is going to elaborate on this again, and I wanted to give her a lot of credit before she dives into this presentation. Typically, district plans in Belton ISD are approved in about August. And last January, y'all hired a crazy guy out of a different district, and he asked some people to do some things different this year. And one of the things that I asked us to do is our board to adopt new goals. And those new goals change the landscape for the development of district and campus improvement plans. And I also asked us to make sure that whatever we put in those plans were meaningful and represented the most important work to move us forward as a school district. And then Melinda joined us in June, and I said, surprise, you get to help lead this process. And so I wanted to give Dr. Golden a lot of credit because there's been a lot of moving parts to the district and campus improvement plan so far this year. Our cabinet has been extremely patient and very gracious in my asks on these things. And Melinda is presenting tonight. It's been a tall task for everyone involved, and I've appreciated their leadership immensely.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. And really, I am representing all of our campus principals and district leadership teams tonight. And on the next slide, I just wanted to talk with you about the purpose of the presentation. I'm just going to hit some two key concept changes or highlight some changes to our process. So I'm going to talk about that this evening so that you're aware of our process. And then we are here seeking approval of district and campus performance objectives. Typically, it would be goals and objectives, but again, y'all passed goals in June, which has anchored the work that we're going to talk about this evening. And so on the next slide, it just highlights our process. It really did begin in June with the passing of those board goals. There are two key concepts you'll see on this slide. One is going to talk about the through line And the other process is talking about the development of theories of action. And so in my next two slides, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the process for actually developing the objectives and developing the action plans to support these objectives. And so in the next slide, we've talked a lot about the through line. And what we mean in this with both campus staff and district staff is really being very, very intentional about what is happening at the student level in terms of student performance, any indicators that we could look at, data we could look at, what's happening for our students. And we put each and every because we believe in each and every. Sometimes things get hidden in all student data, whatever that data set is. So we wanted to really look at each and every student, what's happening, what do we want to have happening with them, and then what are the teacher actions and behaviors and things that need to happen in order to make that happen for students. And if we need teachers doing that, then what do we need leaders doing in order to support teachers so that they can support students, all the way through to central office staff. So when we talk about through line, we're just saying the strategies in a district or campus improvement plan, we should be able to draw a direct line to how that's going to impact students in the classroom. And so we spent time on that, and we also, in the next slide, talked a lot about developing a line to that, then a theory of action, meaning if it's like an equation. If central office and district staff does X to support campus principals so they can do Y, so that teachers can do whatever, Z, then we believe that student learning experiences are going to be improved, and we will be much more likely to support exceptional learning experiences for each and every student. And so all of these two slides represent lots of work behind the scenes that through that work developed into our campus and district improvement plans. And so in that final slide, we just wanted to really emphasize that these plans reflect the priority of the work at the campus and district level to support campuses. It's an ongoing process. What we've told everybody, there may be some processes in a district improvement plan that perhaps as we go to implement might not have been the best process. And so it is okay to take out a strategy and replace it with a better strategy. We don't want these to be plans that sit on a shelf. This really represents the work, and we'll be reflecting on that work throughout the year. And so that last bullet is just, we'll have formative reviews where we're going to be checking in what's going well, what's not going well, what additional support can we provide for our campuses as well as at the district level. And so again, this evening, we provided the plans for you, but tonight we're asking the board to consider and approve the objectives for both the district and campus improvement plans.
Thank you, Dr. Golden. Before we take any action, I just really want to publicly just thank all of the campus administrators. Not all, each and every one of them. Because that's what you said, and that's what should be said, each and every one of our campus administrators, because certainly this is not something they've ever done before. They've got a new process that they're having to learn, and learning anything is hard. Change is hard, but it's in the hard and the pain of the change that you grow. And so to me, although this was a different process, this was a learning opportunity for every one of our campus administrators. So just want to thank them for all the hard work that they're doing and did to get us to where we are and to where we're going. Any other comments or questions about that? Okay, is there a motion to approve as presented? See Mr. Floor, is there a second? Mr. Alcozer, all in favor, please raise your hand. That passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item on our agenda is the acceptance and closeout of the elementary school playground.
We have Mr. Mike Morgan in front of you tonight to give you a little update on this. This is an exciting one, and it's thanks to the action of our facilities committee and our entire board that we get to celebrate a great thing for our students. Mike?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, President McDonald. Thank you, Board of Trustees. It's my pleasure to be here tonight. And my purpose is to bring forward for consideration, discussion, and to take appropriate action regarding the acceptance and closeout of the elementary school playground improvements and additions project, and to approve final payout. Next slide, please. And here you can see some pictures. This were, as we toured these and did our final walkthroughs, not only do they look great, but they're very functional, and they're going to be things that are going to serve our communities and our students for years and decades to come. Just to quickly review, last February 19th, 2020, a presentation was made and the board accepted to go out and seek bids on the approval for the improvements and additions project. The Belton ISD came back in July of 2020 in a regular board meeting to make a recommendation to select G2 CSI Incorporated as our contractor to perform the work. The contract amount project totaled $1,845,000, and substantial completion of the project was achieved in November 18th, 2020 after an August start date. All in all, this project spanned all 10 elementary campuses along with our Belton Early Childhood School. 76 new swings were installed, 13 new playscapes, 17 shade canopies, and over 33,000 square feet of fall protection, along with additional sidewalks and curbing in all new areas. There are some people that we'd like to thank for this project. First and foremost, the BISD Board of Trustees and the BISD Facilities Committee for seeing the need and addressing that need that would help our elementary campuses. Our BISD elementary and BEX principals for their input throughout this process and to help each campus receive a individualized plan that would help best meet their needs. From O'Connell Robertson, we had Kurt Schwarzenfeger and Casey Nicholson. From G2 Construction Services Incorporated, Shane Gibson, Brett Baggerly, and Greg Baggerly. And then, of course, some of our BISD team, David Bennett, our BISD Director of Facilities and Construction, Jennifer Land, for identifying funding sources, our CFO, Dr. Mueller, Robert Mueller played a part in this project as well. We appreciate him and his planning. And then Tammy Shannon in the purchasing department for helping us with contract and helping us with securing the resources. At this time, I would entertain any questions, and I would also ask that we do move tonight to accept and close out the elementary school playground improvements and additions project and approve the final payout of the $1,761,752 to G2 CSI Incorporated.
Thank you, Mike. Any comments or questions? Just excited to see this work done.
It's great.
So excited. Makes me want to be a kid again. Want to go and play at these particular playgrounds. This is awesome. Is there a motion to approve? Mr. Taggart, is there a second? Janet Lee, thank you. All in favor, please raise your hand. That passes unanimously.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. Attestation terminating remote learning for individual students.
I'm back.
Dr. Golden's up one more time again tonight.
I'm back. Good evening. On the next slide, our purpose for the presentation is to consider, discuss, and take possible action on the submission of an attestation allowing for the termination of remote learning based on individual student academic needs. And so what I want to stress, first of all, the Texas Education Agency released this attestation, and this is not for bringing back large quantities of students or ending remote learning for all students. And I know sometimes we're hearing about that in other districts, and that is not the approach we're taking. This is to give us this as an option for individual students based on academic need. And so on this slide, there are requirements that we have to focus on in considering terminating a remote learning environment and bringing a student back to school. Obviously, we have to have published procedures. There are expectations for parent meetings so that we're partnering with our parents in this conversation and developing plans to try to meet our students' needs. There's an appeal process, which includes a medical certification in the event that maybe a student is struggling, but for medical reasons, they really can't return to school. So there's a process for that. The 2-week transition period just means that we've got to give families time to make adjustments to changes like this if we're going to do something like this for an individual student. And so on the next slide, it just highlights kind of our process around criteria, meeting expectations, review, appeal, and return. And the big thing we want to stress again is this is going to be on an individual case-by-case basis. We believe in the partnership with our parents. So there will be parent conferences held, collaborative plans developed to try to help the student be more successful in the at-home learning environment. We'll be monitoring the plan. If the plan continues to not be successful for that student, then a transition plan to return the student to school. And then, of course, an appeal process should one be needed. And so the attestation, what we're asking for this evening is for permission to actually submit the attestation, saying that we'll put a process in place should we need it to bring a student back.
Thank you, Dr. Golden. Any comments or questions about that? Mr. Taggart.
So when I was reading through this process, the one thing that I didn't see, and I know it's an individual basis, let's say that students fail in 2 classes or more, and they do the medical review, and there really isn't a medical reason for them being held out other than concern because of the pandemic, and we go through the process. What happens when you get to the end if the parent still says, nope?
That's a very good question. Parents do have the right to go to another school district if they wished, who is offering at-home learning and who would accept them into that school system. And so parents do have the right to have at-home learning should that be in the best interest of their students and their perspective. That's why we want to use this on a very case-by-case basis. We want our families in our schools. We want our families in our community. We believe face-to-face learning is what's best, but we also respect the rights of our families to make good decisions for their families based on safety reasons. But we want to make sure we're doing this thoughtfully and that if a student would be better served and it's safe for them to return, and they really are deeply struggling academically, we want to be able to bring them back. But yes, a parent could withdraw and seek admission to another district's at-home learning.
So that would be the end of, if you went through the whole process and they just said, again, I'm not, then we could take action to remove that student from the district?
No,
That's not how that works?
our action would be to return them to at-school learning. A parent could withdraw their student at that point if they wanted, but again, that's why we're putting all these processes in place. We want to prevent that. We want our families to stay in our system, and we want to meet our students' needs. And that's why, again, some districts are doing complete termination of at-home learning because it's challenging to do both. We don't believe that that's what's best for our community, but we do want to be able to work with our families. And our hope would be, and our principals have done an incredible job through their conferences. There hasn't had to be appeal processes for so many of our families because they work collaboratively with our principals and returned. And so this is just a new attestation that the state has made available saying if you are going to return someone, there are some things they want us to consider.
Thank you, Dr. Golden.
Just real quick, this does give us the authority. We do have the authority to say to a family, remote learning is not an option for you anymore. And we're, like Melinda said, we're hoping to avoid that at all costs because we don't want a friction point to happen. But ultimately, to answer your question, Ty, if it came down to that at the end, we could say, yes, you do not have access through Schoology to participate as a remote learner anymore. We need to see you on Monday, and then we would go forward from there.
Any other comments? Chris?
So, just from an appeal standpoint, and what, I know on the screen, right, there's a medical appeal, right, but is there a way to appeal that, like, further, right? Is that something that would come to us, or that could come to us eventually, or where does that fit in the process, right? Because, I mean, this is kind of a big step, right? I mean, we're telling a family, you can't do this, right?
So, yeah, I think that's a great question, actually. I do think this could eventually come to you. If we go through this whole process and stuff and they still don't agree with the decision and we terminate remote learning, then there could be grievances filed and we go through a grievance process like we have in our school district.
Right.
But I want to stress that is why Melinda said, like, this is going to be few and far between. And we are making sure that our administrators in our school district know and understand this is not something that we are just going to blanket out there and say, hey, everybody with 2 struggling grades, you're all coming back right now. We believe in partnerships with our families, and I understand that it's been a challenging situation for a lot of our families and for some of our kids in the remote learning world, but we also want to do our best that if they are choosing to stay home right now, that we are actually doing our best to engage them fully right now. So my hope is that this is not employed this year. Just being real honest with you, that's the kind of message that I'm trying to make sure our administrators in our schools understand. But if it has to be employed because it's in the best interest of a student, then yes, we might end up in a situation where they couldn't go through a grievance process.
And so in that process, while they're going through that process, would the students still would they be learning remotely, or would they not? If they chose to.
I think it would be based on the individual student situation there. Our job is to provide a free and appropriate public education for every student, and if we are really at an impasse in all of that, we want to make sure that students are continuing to get educated no matter the adult discrepancy in decisions made. So we would work with that family to figure out what the best way to do that would be, but we would also make sure that we were following appropriate timelines and protocols to move the contentious issue forward, because if it's in the best interest of a kid to be face-to-face, then we need to push that until we get to a resolution.
Any other comments? Mr. Alcozer?
Dr. Golden, I don't know if you or Matt would answer this question. And expanding a little bit on what Chris just brought up, if there is an appeal of some sort, do we have that in our policies already, or do we have a policy in place that would actually, where you could just coattail on that from an appeal here?
We do have grievance processes, but this is a different appeal process because we're going to do our very best to handle and resolve grievances such as this at the lowest level possible. So there will be an appeal process that's outside of that grievance process that we'll be using in hopes that we can, again, do first and foremost what's right for that student, but also don't want to automatically push into a grievance process, our formally adopted grievance process. So we're going to try an informal appeal process first, should we have to do that.
Okay, I guess my concern is that if someone is in that process, where do they go read and say, well, these are the steps that I have to follow from here forward?
Yes, great question. We're going to have to publicize that. That's one of the requirements for TEA, is that we publicize that information. So we've had a team. Gabby Nino is here. She and Arturo have been with Deanna and others working to develop, and Mike Morgan, these processes. And so one of the things we'll have to do once those are finalized is get those published for our website.
And so I think that I'm going to marry up what Chris said and what Manuel said, or what I think I heard them say. If this were to go to they've gone through all this process, now they need to do a level 1 grievance to eventually get to the board. Does any of this process that's outlined here, would any of it marry up to or can be considered part of level 1?
I think that's a really good question.
Or how do they just start ground zero at level 1? And you all revisit all the things you've already done through this particular process?
Yeah. I think we
Just a thought.
Yeah, no, it's a great thought. And I think we'd have to consider the individual circumstances, but there are times that based on the meetings that have already taken place, that could count at the level 1. But I would hate to say that as a blanket statement without knowing the individual circumstances.
Ultimately, I'd say what this process does is it gives the campus administrators a tool to help ensure that the students are being successful in their school. So if they get to a spot where they go through this process that Dr. Golden has outlined, and they disagree with a decision that the campus administrator has made, they would grieve it at that point. And that grievance process normally would start with a level 1, but as Dr. Golden said, based on the scenario and what steps have been taken, it might escalate from there. And then you would go through I think it's FNG local, if I'm not mistaken, outlines our grievance process, and we would follow that grievance process with appropriate timelines to move forward.
That's good. Any other comments? Mr. Fleur.
So, I don't know, can we just talk a little bit about what happens today to students who may fall into this category for us to reach out to those students and families. Right? And where I'm coming from is I just want to make sure that like the meeting that's outlined on the screen here is not the first meeting we've had with a parent, right? So what does that look like before we get to this process?
Yeah, so what the team has been doing is developing what's the internal Belton ISD process prior to having to implement the requirements that the Texas Education Agency is requiring. So we agree with you. There should be communication. I shouldn't, as a parent, be called to and hear for the very first time that my child is struggling academically and you're considering bringing my student back. And so our campus principals, our teachers, I've heard everything from home visits taking place to multiple emails to, depending on the age of the student, the parents, phone calls, not just from the teachers, but from administrators, counselors, assistant principals. And so I think that the Texas Education Agency putting this in place because they're hearing concerns across the state that some of our students that are at-home learners are struggling, and that teachers are going above and beyond trying to resolve that and help students as well as principals. And there are just some cases in which a student really is best served face-to-face. And so, yes, we will have our own Belton systems in place prior to kicking in these requirements from Texas Education Agency.
Any other comments?
Yes,
Yes,
one
ma'am.
for me. Okay, so I hate to ask the same question in a different way, but to kind of what Manuel said here on policy, is the reason it doesn't need to be put into our physical policy in our handbook, anything like that, is because it is temporary for our COVID
Yes.
times? Okay.
Yes. Now, certainly if we long-term see that at-home learning is something that continues in school systems, then I think we would have to consider policy revisions to support those kind of learning environments. But this is really for COVID for this year.
Any other comments? Mr. Alcosa?
Now, these issues that we're surfacing now, talking about the procedural aspects of it, Matt, couldn't you, if something came up, couldn't you just handle that by regulation?
Absolutely. So what basically is being outlined tonight are
Right.
administrative actions that would be taken prior to the grievance process being initiated. So it'd be the informal resolution of this. It's the campus working with the family to say, we need you in school, or we need to see some drastic improvement in your home learning. And so these are the things that we would expect to take place. What this attestation allows us is to give a carrot at the end to say to their families, but we really do have the authority to say you can't be an at-home learner anymore. So yes, this is really administrative regulation worthy material that we're looking at right now.
Right.
Awesome. Any other comments? Starting to feel like church. The pastor asked, is there anything else? And there's always one more thing. We will go ahead and shut it down. At this time, is there a motion to approve as presented? Okay, Mr. Norwood, is there a second? If that's Janet, I can't see. Thank you, Ms. Lee. All in favor, please raise your hand. That passes unanimously.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Then we will move on to our next item, which is reports. Facilities Committee report.
Now, if it's okay, we would like to pause at this point and recess so that we are able to recognize the stampede
Oh,
that's going to be
absolutely.
performing.
Yes.
I think right now is a perfect opportunity, and then we'll come back and jump into facilities and policy
Yes,
committee from there.
absolutely. Wonderful.
Before you call us back into session, just a
Well, it's 7:17. What an awesome recess we had. We'll get back to the business of business, but wow, since we're in the business of kids, we couldn't have had a better recess, right? So we'll just start off our, back at our regular workshop board meeting with Facilities Committee report.
All right, so I've got to go over here pretty quick. My daughter's sitting at the Madrigal concert over at the high school, so I'm going to be quick and then I'm going to take off if that's okay. I'll give everybody a heads up beforehand. So we met in our last facilities committee, and basically what we did was we tried to kind of get a grip on the demography report that we'd been presented, like really kind of start wrapping our brain around, 10 years, 4,500 more kids. So that was kind of the main thing that we kind of talked a little bit about. Then we had a presentation by the city of Belton. The city manager was there with his team, Sam Listy and his folks were there, and they were telling us what they've done preliminary at the Shanklin site, the 109 acres that we have. And I actually have been out there a couple times now driving around, looking. Those two signs are right there on the corner and see, and then going around. So they kind of laid out and had graphs and easels, and they were really well done what the city did. But the challenge is that they don't have the $4 million that's going to cost for infrastructure. But what the city's done, I've been following them for a long time. Our walking trails and all the really cool things that we've got in Belton. A lot of that stuff came from these TERS grants and things like that. And there's a way that Sam outlined that there's a chance that we could get in on some of these TERS grants to help us pay for some of this. If not, then Belton ISD needs to come up with the 3.75, close to $4 million for infrastructure to put facilities on this property. So I thought the city did a real good job, and they're more than willing to work with us to come up, with a solution together, teamed it together. Then we kind of started talking a little bit about, we know what's coming up in the next 2 years because of the growth. We know our hot spots with Tarver and Chisholm Trail, and we've seen with the demography report how fast we're growing in certain areas. But then we're also left with 3 campuses in our district, 3 elementary school campuses that are very, very, that are old. So what we've got to try to figure out in the next couple of years is what we can do to help with the growth with our elementary facilities, but also kind of change the landscape for those kids that are in those facilities and put some new schools and how we're going to get there. And I think what we've learned is in the next couple of years with some debt that's rolling off, some really thrifty management by our CFO, Jennifer, and her team, and the bond people and different things that we've got, we're going to have about $130 million potentially that we could come to the public with for some bond stuff. So we just need to come up with a really smart plan over that time. So that's kind of another thing that we've really started discussing. Obviously, when we do get into those discussions, then at some point we're going to have to redraw some lines, and probably that's going to be another discussion a couple years down the road. Man, seems like we just did that here not too long ago. That's a tough one. And then we've got some projects. We've got some money left over from investment with our bond, and the facilities report that we're having Mike and his people do, the review, is going to tell us more in March, kind of give us a clearer plan. But there are some things that have been on the list for a really long time that are some lower end things that we can move forward with. And one of them is in our consent agenda tonight, the roof at the swim center. It needs to be done. It's a safety factor. It's just got to be done, $186,000. And then I think a couple other things that are on the list that'll come forward, and we'll start putting these things out for bid later on with approval and things, is the tennis court expansion, gaining those other 2 courts at Belton High School. And then we're probably going to join that with some drainage things. I don't know if you've ever been around there, the softball field and the tennis courts. When it rains, it's a mess. And then after a couple of days, we got mosquitoes, and it's just really a mess. And something else we can gain with that project is we're going to get a tarp or 2 or a canopy or 2 from that we're left over from the playground equipments that we can utilize in that concept too. And Sam and Mike and everybody's been on top of that one. And then another one is when the Lake Belton High School, as magnificent as that facility is, I'll never forget the first time I walked out onto the baseball and softball fields and looked up at the stands and went, uh-oh, we have a problem. So we're going to have to address the fact that we do not have enough seating for what's fixing to be a 5A high school moving forward the next go-round. We do not have enough seating, and we're going to have to take care of that problem. So we're going to have to put that out for bid, but that's a 10 to 15 week project. We were trying to put it in with the bond, but it's going to close out. So we'll have to take that to bid at a later time. So those are just some of the things that we talked about in this last meeting. Any questions? All right, I'm going to go listen to some pretty voices.
Hey, Ty, I got one question for you
What do
real
you
quick. As far as that seating is concerned, you're talking about there's no seating on one side and just adding
Well,
bleachers
just
there?
overall capacity.
Just capacity, okay.
And especially if we're still into the throes of, well, it's not going to be fixed this spring. So we're going to really have some issues because if we're still at the 50% with the COVID and the pandemic. It kind of depends on how things are looking when we get to the season. Hopefully things will kind of start lightening up a little bit, but it's just not adequate for a 4A, especially when we move into the 5A, 6A ranks. It is just not adequate seating.
Yeah, so along those lines.
I got 2 minutes.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I mean, I think we do need to have a bigger discussion, though, on long-term strategy for fields, right? So I don't want to get into that here. I mean, it's not on the agenda, so.
Yeah, that's a different topic that I think we have to discuss also in the facilities committee too. This one is specific to baseball and softball for spring sports that we brought to the facilities committee, and it was about specific capacity things. But I do know, yes, about field use and what we want moving forward, that's going to have to be a facilities committee discussion and then a whole board discussion as well.
And that's, believe me, it's being kicked around, all those possibilities. We know what's coming.
Thank you, Madam President. My fellow trustees, Dr. Smith, we met last on December the 7th. I can't ever see Janet down there. Yeah, yeah. With that said, on December 7th, we discussed EIC local, which I think Dr. Deanna Lovesmith is an expert on. We discussed CW local, and then BQ, BQA, and BQB. Let me start with CW local, get kind of out of, we talked about EIC local first, but let me talk about CW local tonight first. CW local has to do with naming of facilities. We started this discussion, I guess, about 2 months ago when we talked about naming a field or a facility after someone, or just naming a facility. We had that discussion then, and Mike had brought us back then some policies to look at from different school districts. And then we decided to narrow it down some. So he brought us a draft on December 7th of a policy and procedure that we could follow in naming a facility. There were some things in there that we wanted that he's going to go back and then maybe bring us a first reading probably around, we decided February or January?
Yeah, it'll probably be February or so.
Probably February.
Yeah.
Now, a facility can be anything from even a room, okay, a room, a field, or even a school. Now, when we're going to name a campus, and obviously there may be some campuses in the future, when we name a campus, we're going to have a committee set up for that. And in the policy, it's going to tell us how that committee comes to life, okay? But at the end of the day, the board has discretion on whether something is named or not named, or whether a name is accepted or not. But the main thing that we had a discussion with Mike about is that we want to have that policy have a clear procedure as to what is followed when someone, a member of the community or anyone, wants to name a facility, whether it be a field, a room, or anything like that. But at the same time, though, like Chris made a comment, said we don't want to open the floodgates. I mean, what if we have 500 people that want to name every room at Belton High School? I mean that's a silly example, but we want to make sure that there's a gatekeeper procedure or policy in place within the policy itself. So right now, we're just going to go back to the drawing board, and Mike's going to bring us back something that's going to be very concise, very easy to read, and it's going to have the process very easy to follow once you read the policy and procedure in place. Anything else about that, Chris, that you can remember? Okay.
Will that process have like an application process to it?
Yes, it will.
Okay.
We talked about maybe submitting a form that would be drafted and promulgated by the district, that a member of the community could just fill out the form. And without getting too much into the meat of it, basically a person could fill out the form and say, this is why I want to name this field, and then put some support behind that. Newspaper clippings, articles, anything about that individual, if it's going to be an individual, and why they think that this facility should be named after this person, or we should have this name attached to this facility. The only difference is that the selection committee is only going to apply when it's naming a new campus. Okay? So yes, that's going to be in place.
Board discretion for.
At the end of the process, the board always has, right. Board still has discretion as to whether a name is even adopted. So that, going to bring back for the first reading probably February, and then we'll have a second reading whenever we convene, probably in March. Now, EIC local and BQ, BQA, and BQB, those things we started to discuss because it hinges upon this journey of a graduate. And I don't know if I want to call it a concept, a process. Matt, what would you call it?
I'd say process.
It's
I think
a process,
you're right on, yep.
Okay. Now, EIC local, we discussed this, if everyone will recall, we discussed it back in March when we were trying to decide whether we should go pass-fail and how we, how a class ranking and all those kinds of things. So EIC local is the policy that we have in place now that tells us how we weigh certain courses, how many points we assign to a certain course, how we come up with a GPA, and within that, the concern is that, and then Chris brought this up. He said, if we're going to weigh dual credit less than an AP course, why are we doing that? Okay? So it all goes back to what has been said here many times tonight and even in our workshop. We're trying to focus on the aspirations and goals of students, have them live out their dreams. So if a kid is a valedictorian material, that kid may not be able to take certain courses because they're focused on becoming valedictorian, or at least competing for that, because of how we have things weighted within our policy. And if our goal is to have kids live out their dreams academically, then maybe we need to modify our policies that weigh these courses so that a kid that's a potential valedictorian can actually take other courses. Now, in that discussion, we looked at, I think, 4 different other districts. For example, one district, they only have, I think we have 4 levels, right? Deanna's nodding her head yes. In one of these districts, they only had 3 levels. And in one district, instead of giving a certain level to a 99 or a 98 in class, if it was between a 90 and 100, you got an A and you got 4 points, okay? Just like they did in the old days, all right? So the question that we tossed around and said, what are the pros and cons of that, okay? One district that we looked at only ranked the top 10% of the class. So then we got into the discussion, if that's the case, how's that going to affect kids that apply for scholarships that are in the top 12% or top 13% or 14%? How's it going to affect admissibility into certain colleges? And that's one of the things that we tabled, and I think we decided we're going to do some more research on that and come back with some answers for those particular topics. Another thing that we discussed, and we may have gotten a little bit off on a tangent when we started talking about New Tech and Belton High School, and that they both have a valedictorian and a salutatorian. Now, the way that we have our system now, we can actually have, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, we could have a valedictorian in New Tech that could actually be the salutatorian at Belton High School. So how are we going to handle that situation? Right, because even though we treat them as two different schools for purposes of valedictorian and salutatorian, they're actually one unit, right? So we decided to look at other school districts that have a similar situation where they have their what will be the equivalent of a New Tech, and see how they handle that situation when it comes to grading and class rank. And all this is in line with what we're talking about, the journey of a graduate. And the roadmap that Matt keeps talking about, well, this is one of the signs in that roadmap, is this EIC local. Because it's going to necessarily be impacted based upon what we do with calculation of GPAs. And what kids want, when there was a student that spoke up the other day at the meeting on the journey of a graduate, the first one that I had attended, and this particular student, I was really touched by it. She said, well, some of the things that you guys are talking about are actually important when we become adults. And basically what she was saying is, I hope that when you deliver education to the kids of Belton Independent School District, that you talk about communication, that you talk about technology, that you talk about critical thinking. Okay, this is the same thing that the administration has been telling us all along. And I told Matt earlier, I said, you know what? It finally clicked. I had a light bulb flash today when Dr. Golden was talking, and I thought, I kind of see where you guys are going with this. It really makes sense. Now, that takes me into BQ, BQA, and BQB. These are three planning and decision-making policies. And if you sit and read those three policies, they kind of overlap. You'll see some words in there that appear over and over again: goals, objectives, how we're going to monitor things, which is in line with what we're talking about with the journey of a graduate, which is goals, objectives, okay? How are our graduates going to look when they cross the stage? What kind of mindset are they going to have? What sort of beliefs are they going to have, okay? And all that's coming from what the community is giving us back in these meetings. So what we decided at the end of the day in our meeting is that, and I'm going to read this sentence here, what impact should the journey of a graduate, once adopted, have on district and campus planning and decision making? And basically what we decided is it's going to affect everything that we do. Todd was at the meeting. It's going to affect the way that Todd hires folks. Because the teachers that we have in this district, they're the ones that are delivering the goods, okay? And if we want those goods delivered a certain way, then we've got to hire certain kinds of people. And then we have the goal. I don't remember if it's number 5, use the most efficient way of doing things, okay? It's going to affect everything we do, facilities, everything that that Ty and Jeff discuss in facilities. They're always going to have to be thinking about what is the journey, what does our graduate look like? So at the end of the day, it's going to affect us district-wide. And the neat thing about that is that the community had a significant impact on how we decide what we're going to do. So the work is just starting, and after I left that meeting, I thought Matt and his staff, Dr. Golden, Dr. Lovesmith, Mike Morgan, you guys are doing a tremendous amount of work behind the scenes that the public just has no idea. I mean, you're talking about countless hours, meetings that you guys attend. Yeah, we're up here talking about, and I'm here reporting what happened, and I'm going to talk to you for 10 minutes, but you're talking about hours and hours and hours of work that's gone behind the scenes in the midst of a pandemic. So I have to tip my hat to you guys and what you're doing. And as we move forward, it's starting to make more sense to me. Maybe some of the other folks maybe look at it differently, but it's starting to make some sense to me. And I think this is it's a huge endeavor. But as I said the other day at the conclusion of the meeting, this is something that's going to impact the way we deliver education in this district for years and years to come. So I commend you for that, Matt, and your staff. Chris, anything else about that? It's just so hard to talk behind this mask.
Great job, though.
Yeah.
Great job. Thank you.
So-
That was an excellent report.
Anyway,
Anything else you want to add to that, sir?
no, I think that's it. It's a work in progress. We're just chipping away at the top, but I'm telling you, I mean, there's some exciting conversations that we're going to have in the future. And one of the things that came out in the meeting the other day, I'll end it with this, is what's the portrait going to look like? Right, Matt? What's it going to look like? And I'm excited to see what it's going to look like, because it's going to tell a story.
That's awesome.
Right?
That's awesome. Thank you, Mr. Alcozer. That was an excellent report. Speaking of reports, let's move over to the superintendent's report.
Madam President, members of the board, I want to thank you all for your work on those committees because they're invaluable to moving our school district forward. So thank you to each and every one of you for participating. Next slide, please. For this month on our superintendent report, obviously, this is my job to provide you as the Board of Trustees with some administrative information from the past month. Next slide. So a couple of numbers update, and this is a question that Jeff asked a little bit earlier that I couldn't remember off the top of my head. As of last week, we had 9,602 students that were at-school learners, and 3,100 of them were at-home learners. That's a little bit increased in at-home learning since the last time I reported to you all, for a total of 12,702 students enrolled in Belton ISD, which is an increase of 51 students since our last board meeting. So we continue to grow in our school district, and I think that's something to be excited about. But to point out that fluctuation in at school and at home learning, this is all challenging times for us and for our teachers because of implications of COVID. And we do want to continue to give families options, but we want to do so in the best manner that makes it easiest for our teachers to meet the needs of the students. So it's a constant balance that we're trying to work on in all of this. Highlights of the month include our Journey of a Graduate meetings that Manuel has referenced a few different times. We are thrilled with the participation of our community and the discussions that have been happening. Thank you to our board members for stopping in here and there and checking on that process. And thank you to all of our community members for participating. I think the show stealers all the time are obviously the students. It's amazing what happens when you give students a great problem to solve and let them have a microphone, because they come up with some really good things to share. And we've got great students in Belton ISD. We have some successes as a school district that I want to highlight. First of all, obviously Lake Belton High School's performance a little bit earlier tonight down at the state marching competition was phenomenal, but we have had individual successes and team successes throughout our system. I want to celebrate our coaches in Belton ISD right now, because I was thinking about it. While we may not have had some successes and wins and losses with different sports, we have had tremendous success for our students in participation in athletics. When we kicked off the school year, I don't know how many of us really thought that we'd be able to get through a fall season with all of the things we were able to get through. And I commend our coaches, our district athletic director, Sam Skidmore, all of our staff for creating these opportunities for our students to succeed. And Keith Zulke and our fine arts department, it has just been phenomenal seeing our students in their elements. Obviously, we mentioned a little bit earlier about our my celebration of our district and campus improvement efforts. We have a lot of work going on, but as Manuel just articulated, I hope that people are starting to see the connections and that we are working hard to make sure that Our current board has the ability to set direction for the future of Belton ISD, and that it's well informed by the community that you all represent. And I think that's something exciting to see come to fruition and to see all these pieces starting to come together. Obviously, we're in need of a holiday break. I don't know if anybody in this room feels it, but I feel it. We are excited for the 2-week break coming up and the week that we had at Thanksgiving time. We're also excited to come to a conclusion of the first semester at the end of January. There's been a lot of great work that's been going on in Belton ISD with our teachers and our staff, but we're also ready for this little bit of break because people are tired out. And so I want to celebrate staff celebration. I got to go and present the Temple Rotary Teacher of the Month Award at the Temple Rotary meeting not too long ago. And our staff is working night and day to make sure our students have the opportunities that they need to be successful. And if you couple that with the athletics and fine arts things that I mentioned just a few minutes ago, it is it's a little breathtaking when you think about what our teachers have done for our kids. And so I just want to make sure we celebrate our staff. We also have worked to make sure that the support follow-up has been there. When we ask teachers for their feedback and they give us feedback on what we can do to support them, we have been very deliberate in trying to say, based on your feedback, here's what we can do and here are our next steps. And so we were happy to make sure that some of those things happened. And I thank our board for your patience and your willingness to help along the way, because it is a challenging time for teachers. But when you approve that calendar tonight and when you say, and you say it often, hey, what can we do to support y'all? It's very refreshing, and I think our teachers feel that in the classrooms. And then finally, Beef held their Boots and Barbecue event last month. I think it was right before the last board meeting, and I didn't get to talk about it a whole lot. But Beef also went out and handed out a bunch of teacher grants to our teachers throughout our school district, and I had the pleasure of being a part of that. I can't thank our community partners enough for what they do for our kids. I told you all last spring, and I'll say it again, when I asked everybody what the constant was in Belton ISD, it was the focus on students, and I feel that through our partners in Beef as well. Next slide. There are some of the pictures that I wanted to share with you. I want to share a couple of things because one of the things that I think is really important in these pictures, that they demonstrate our engagement with the community. You see a couple of different Zoom pictures. One is with a group of teachers. One is with a group of the Journey of a Graduate community group that we're working with, which includes teachers as well. In the bottom middle, you see a tour of Lake Belton High School and our auto shop at Lake Belton High School with Adrian Kennedy, who is our executive director of the Temple Economic Development Council there. So we are working to constantly create these partnerships like we have with Beef, and to create that community input on the direction we have in Belton ISD. And I really celebrate that. Also, that South Belton Middle School choir concert I went to, if you haven't had the opportunity to see, we are making do in choir concerts with masks on, and they're doing it, and we're making it all work. And so, and you also see Lake Belton High School's performance at the regional competition in that other picture. So all that being said, we are extremely proud of the work that is going on to engage our community in multiple ways to make those great things happen for our kids. And we want to make sure we thank our community partners for that. Next slide. COVID-19 update. I'm going to invite Dr. Golden to come up, and she's going to help me give you all a couple of updates and make sure I don't forget anything on this one. There are a few things I want to be really direct about with this update, and first is that we are still in Scenario 3. Scenario 3 is 5 days a week of face-to-face instruction for every student that wants it in Belton ISD, and that means that we still have an at-home learning option. Nothing has changed with the scenarios that we are in right now. That being said, we want to make sure that we constantly talk about student and staff safety precautions. Please wear your masks. Please wash your hands. Please make sure that we keep as far physically distant as we possibly can in these situations, because we want to keep our kids in school. That's our ultimate goal in all of this. I say that, and I want to be really deliberate about this, because I also need everyone to understand that these scenarios that were developed in the summer were developed to be employed in case we needed them if the health emergency continues across our nation. And our numbers are increasing in Bell County, and we know there was a threat level that was escalated by our county health authority the other day. And it's important to point out, while that does not trigger a reaction for Belton ISD to do something different, we do need to monitor our data, monitor the data of our county, monitor the data of our state, but also monitor the data internally of our schools and try and make sure that we are making the best decisions possible. It is quite possible that we might need to move to scenario 4 coming up. Scenario 4, if you all recall, was a hybrid schedule. That is not an ideal situation. I don't want to do that, but we might need to do that in order to best keep students safe. And I wanted to ask Dr. Golden to come up because one of the items on the consent agenda that's on there tonight is directly related to this and being able to allow us to move to other scenarios. And it was just afforded to us by Texas Education Agency on Thursday during our superintendent's call. So Melinda, do you want to explain a little bit?
Yes, I wrote December 10th. So yes, this past Thursday, the commissioner let us know that for districts that have an approved asynchronous plan, which we do, we talked with you about that and submitted that, and it was approved by the state, may request a waiver to schedule non-consecutive asynchronous instructional days during the spring 2021 semester for a maximum of up to 2,100 minutes. And so by making it 2,100 minutes, that's confusing, right? Because you already passed a waiver earlier. This is different. This is in the event that we would have to go to a hybrid scenario. And if you remember this past time when we did, Wednesdays, for example, was used as an asynchronous day, supported deep cleaning of our schools and supported teacher planning. If we were to have to move into a scenario such as that or a version of that, then the state has recognized that they needed to give additional minutes to support that asynchronous learning time. So there is a waiver on consent this evening for approval of that. We hope we don't have to use that at all. But if we were, because of the health conditions, required to really consider going into a hybrid schedule again, then we would need those minutes.
And so that scenario 4 that we're talking about that we may need to employ, we'll see depending on the data that we have, that waiver that you will approve later tonight allows us to do that, and we will employ that if needed, but it's not automatically built into any kind of calendar or schedule. So that's what that instructional minutes waiver is coming up. We say this all with the current fact that we are still in scenario 3. I imagine that there's a lot of gossip in the social media world about what's going to happen when we come back from winter break. And I want to be really clear. Our plan is to be open in scenario 3 if possible, and we will continue to plan to do that. If needed, we might employ scenario 4. As a last resort, we might employ scenario 5. A lot of it depends on how conditions continue to evolve over the time. What we can promise to our community is that we will communicate officially with them through our district website, through videos, through our Skylert, and try and make sure that the communication is extremely clear. But no one is changing scenarios at this point. We just want to simply make sure that our community understands that we are still monitoring the data. Our goal is to keep our kids safe, our staff safe, and to try and make sure we're providing the best education possible. And so we will keep you all updated along the way with that. Are there any questions on the COVID update piece before I jump into the last couple of slides here?
Mr. Alcozer.
Matt, I know that we've had situations where, and at least other districts have as well, about substitute teachers, staff being affected by this COVID situation. If it's not affecting students as much, but it's affecting staff significantly, would that be another cause for moving into, let's say, scenario number 4?
Yes, sir. And that's a great point to point out. I appreciate you bringing that up. One of the things that we have to have in order to do face-to-face instruction is staff in the buildings to safely do face-to-face instruction and to do it meaningfully. We currently have quite a few teachers and staff members that are quarantined or isolated due to COVID-related issues. That doesn't include people who are just also sick or out as well. And so we have a number of people who are out of the physical learning environment in our school system. We have to have enough people to actually conduct class and run schools and all of that too. And thanks to Todd and our HR department and Calvin Itz, there was a plan that was created that we've been employing that gets people out, even in our central office, covering buildings, covering facilities, trying to make sure that instruction is continuing for our kids. But we are worried, because if numbers continue to increase, do we have enough bodies to actually do that safely? It might be a scenario where we might have to go remote or hybrid in order to just manage the situation, and that could be a staff challenge for us as well, not just the actual number of active cases.
I have a quick question. So with the new CDC guidelines of if you have close contact quarantine, not if you have COVID, moving from 14 to 7 days, are we now employing that currently?
Yes, we are.
Does that help at all with getting staff back to work?
It has helped us. I would say, and Todd, feel free to come on up and you can add in this if you'd like. I would definitely say that's helped us. I can tell you that over the weekend, we just had a number of staff able to come back to work today, and it was, I believe, because of the new guidelines through CDC. Todd, is there anything you'd like to say on that?
No, I would echo that. It has helped us. Unfortunately, about what we're taking off, we're probably adding back up. So it's a roller coaster. But we do have, like Matt said, Dr. Smith said, we do have a process in place and to cover classes, and it seems to be working.
You know, I know this is a tough time for not only students, but teachers as well, and just want to say thank you to all the staff for helping each other out, for those that are out and for those that are covering for those that are out. Thank you all so much for stepping to the plate, because I know it's not easy if you have to go to various campuses, but just your willingness to step up and help out, that's greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I think that's a really important one, and that also, whenever we get a chance, this is think a teacher time, right? Whenever you get a chance, if you see them in the aisle at H-E-B or Walmart or in the store or on the street at a Christmas event, please make sure you just thank them, because they are covering sub-jobs that go unfilled. They're planning for face-to-face and remote learning. They are, in some cases, being quarantined and then coming back and getting negative COVID tests and all of that, and it's all just constantly moving. And so the work of our educators has been nothing less than heroic this year, so please make sure you thank them.
Yes, sir. Mr. Floor.
So I've gotten this question a couple times. So with the different scenarios, is it possible we could move a specific campus to a specific scenario, not like necessarily the entire district, right?
Yes, it is. And so we obviously did this and you see it on this that says system response. So this was our system response before. But ultimately, if we get into a situation where you have an outbreak of COVID active cases in a school, it might be that that school needs to go to all remote learning and that the other schools continue in our school district. TEA has provided us the flexibility to be able to do that, and we would employ those things rather than shutting down the whole school district at that point. That being said, there are a couple challenges that continue to manifest themselves system-wide, and that is number of subs and ability to cover classes and number of people being quarantined. And so it could very well be a system response or a unique school response depending on the situation.
When you say school, you're talking campus, though, right?
Yes, I'm sorry, campus response.
All right, awesome.
Any other
comments?
questions on the COVID-19 piece? Okay, next slide, please. There we go. So as part of the March 17th, 2020 resolution, we said that we would come to you all with appropriate updates. I'm going to ask Todd to come and update you all from an HR perspective, and then I'll provide you some updates from Jennifer Land and a finance perspective.
Thank you. We do have, I do have two updates for y'all tonight, or two items for y'all tonight. First of all, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, that's the leave that was granted by the federal government, provided leave for individuals who tested positive or quarantined or were impacted by a daycare closure or school closure, and provided leave for them in those cases. Well, that is set to expire on December the 31st. You might see some other districts bring some board resolutions to their board. Our board resolution that y'all provided to us in March granted the superintendent authority to create leave during this pandemic process. And so our plan is to continue the use of that FFCRA leave for the remainder of this school year, or for at least the remainder of this school year. And so that's it's something that we've been utilizing from time to time with people in situations. Again, we are trying to be flexible with individuals and leave, allowing people to work from home if they're quarantined to kind of protect that leave as well. So do appreciate that. The second item that I have for you tonight is between the November and December board meetings, and you saw the increase in enrollment numbers earlier, and so we have ordered 200 additional Chromebooks, and we did that under, again, the authorization of the board resolution, and so we have ordered those, and the cost for those is about $84,060. So those are the two items I have for tonight.
Thank you.
And again, board, that part of that resolution is so we can act in a timely manner on some things. Those Chromebooks, I believe, Todd, if I'm not mistaken, we're still not expecting until February, right?
That is correct, and so we felt it important to try to get that order in quick because we knew it was going to take some time. But I think it's February date, I think is kind of what we're looking at right now.
Thank you, sir. And so we share that because we want you to know what's being done under that resolution still, and that you gave us some specific abilities, and I want you to know exactly what we're carrying out under that, and also the why. Timing-wise, some of these things are really important. As you know, Ms. Land is not here tonight, and so I have a brief update from her. Initially, we thought we were going to be talking to you a little bit about a reimbursement piece, and we've talked to you about COVID-19 reimbursement for our Chromebooks that we have purchased. And Jennifer was going to be coming to you tonight and talking under this topic right here about what we were doing. It turns out that we didn't have to use this resolution authority in order to be able to do some things. On the consent agenda, there's a budget amendment for over $1 million, and that is to pay off the lease of Chromebooks. And in that budget amendment, the reason we're doing that is TEA guidelines that we got since, I think it was early November that we got them, allowed us to be able to seek reimbursement, but in order to seek reimbursement for those Chromebooks, and I believe we can get up to 75% for reimbursement, we had to actually pay off the lease in order to show them that we had purchased them to actually get reimbursed for them. So we have made that transaction. That budget amendment that you're approving tonight allows us to do that, and we will continue to pursue all available avenues to be reimbursed for COVID-related expenses. But this is one of those actions that we thought we were going to say as part of the resolution, but it turned out that this work took place as part of the budget amendment process tonight. I think that covers all of our resolution items to report tonight. Next slide. Last thing I wanted to say is just a thank you. There's a lot of challenging situations in school districts across the state as I talk to my colleagues. And I am blessed to be here and be a part of Belton ISD. And I think a lot of that is because of the leadership of this Board of Trustees and the support of the community. I can't tell you how grateful I am to be here and to be a superintendent here and to be a partner with you all and doing great things for kids. As we go into the holiday break, I wanted to make sure I said that to you all as trustees, but also to our community, because it has been hard, but I can tell you I look forward to coming to work each and every day because of the people and the work that we're doing for kids. And I thank you all for that, and I thank our community for that as well. And that concludes the superintendent report.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Does the board, you all have any comments or questions about anything that was reported? Well, I won't get into the mushy stuff about how, much we appreciate you and all of that, because I'm a crybaby and I'll cry, and, we need to get through the rest of this.
Sounds good.
We'll talk later. All right, so the next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. Does the board have any item, is there any item that you all wish to pull for further discussion? Hearing no takers, is there a motion to approve as presented? Mr. Norwood, is there a second? Mr. Alcozer, all in favor, please raise your hand. That passes. Okay, next item on our agenda, board request for information and/or reports. Chris, do you have anything? Mr. Norwood? Ms. Lee? Mr. Alcozer? All righty. Our next item is our calendar of events, upcoming events. You all have that at your place setting, but I will go ahead and just remind you that we are starting to take applications for Area 2. That opens up tomorrow. January 6th is the next Journey of a Graduate meeting. That's number 4. And then we have a special board meeting, depending on how things go, January 11th, and another one identified for possibly January 19th if needed. And then facilities will meet January 20th, and our next regular board meeting will be January 25th. And that is all that we have. If there's anything else? Yes.
If I could just say real quickly, we had a regularly scheduled policy committee meeting for this Wednesday. We have canceled that policy committee meeting at this time, and also we had a regularly scheduled, excuse me, I said policy committee, I meant facilities committee. We had a regularly scheduled facilities committee for this Wednesday. We have canceled that facilities committee meeting for this Wednesday. We had a regularly scheduled policy committee for Monday, January the 4th, and we have canceled that as well to give people some time transitioning back in. We will resume normal committee meetings. The Facilities Committee will meet in January. The Policy Committee will meet at the beginning of February.
Okay. And so BISD will be closing for a nice Christmas break. This Friday is the last day. And so I hope everyone gets rested, rejuvenated. And with that being said, we are adjourned. 8:02. Ms. Janet.
Is it really
Ms. Janet, I just have a question.
Is it really?
Is there a possibility? Yeah, that'd be lovely.
Is it cold? That's what our
Eventually, but you know, that's what I'm thinking. And if you don't want to, maybe one of the other guys might want to.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Thanks for all you do.
Just a thought. Yeah, I'll talk. Not what I was talking about.
Thank you. You too.
Is moving Janet from there to the pool.
I think it'd be great. I think.
I can't.